My name is Joyce Richardson Laws. I'm the daughter of H.B. and Helen Richardson. I was born in Lepanto, Arkansas on November the 13th, 1937. I had an older brother, Hugh, who was born August the 26th, 1936, who was 15 months older than me. And then I have a younger brother, Thomas Aaron, who is 10 years younger than I am, and he would have been 11 years younger than my brother Hugh. By the way, we called Hugh Spud. That was his nickname. Um, my parents both lived in Lepanto, but my father had come from Mississippi, from Calhoun County. His name was Huey Benny Richardson. He was named after Huey Long, who had been the governor of Louisiana, and my grandfather Richardson, who was Morgan Thomas Richardson, had admired him. So that's how I know how my dad was that, but he never went by that name. Everyone called him Doc, D-O-C. And I asked him once how he got that name, and he said, well, when he was a little boy, he always wanted to be a doctor. And that, the Depression hit, and there was no money for him to go to school and to follow that dream. I've often wondered if he would be so thrilled if he knew that his granddaughter, my daughter Margot, was a doctor. Mm-hmm. That would kind of please him, I think. And one of his grandsons, great-grandsons, Bryant Richardson, is an orthopedic dentist. We have quite a few medical people in our family. I think as a result of all of that, maybe for his genes, I don't know. But at any rate, I want to start with telling what little I know about his family. He had two brothers. Their names were Ralph and Brown Richardson. He had a sister named Maudie, a sister named Lurleen, a sister named Alberta, a sister named Shirley, a sister named Thelma, and a sister named Delbert. My dad was 16 when his mother died. His mother's name was Viola Eason Richardson. She had been an Eason. Well, actually, her full name was Georgia Viola Eason Richardson. She lived in the Slate Springs area of Mississippi with the Eason family, her large family. And my grandfather, well, I don't really know anything about my great-grandfather, if he died or what happened. But anyway, Morgan Thomas Richardson and Georgia Viola Eason married, and that was their children that I just named. Georgia died when she was 47 years old from a cerebral hemorrhage, which was very, very young. My dad was 16 at that time when she died. She left a 3-month-old baby, Aunt Thelma. And Aunt Maudie, being the oldest girl in the family, took that job over as taking care of her and the other children, actually. And my grandfather Richardson's mother lived with them, and her name was Susan Elizabeth Tyndall Richardson. She was a Tyndall. These are all families that were in that area of Slate Springs and Calhoun County. When my grandparents married, Georgia and MT, that's what my grandfather went by, when they married, she was given a section of land by her father. I think he gave every one of his children a section of land, or at least the daughters, I don't really know. And they lived on the farm there in Slate Springs. At the time of her death, they were in just in the midst of building a new house high up on a hill. So that's the house that I remember going to and visiting a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, because Daddy would take Spud and I down to see his family several times a year, maybe 4 or 5. We'd always go the day after Christmas, I remember that. We never went for Thanksgiving, but we went a lot, over the years. It was a long drive, from Arkansas, Lepanto to Calhoun City. But when we would go, one of the things I remember is that Daddy had a friend named Graham Barton that they had grown up together, and Graham had been killed during the war. As a matter of fact, when my daddy got that telegram, it's the only time I ever remember seeing him cry. And so one of the things we always did was we went to see Mr. and Miss Barton, Graham's parents. And that was kind of, I think, pretty special, that he had some cousins in Calhoun City, and, you know, he would go into town and we would visit with them too. They were kind of distant cousins, I think. Uh, my grandmother Eason, my great grandmother Eason, they were a large family, and he had cousins from his mother's side of the family. And my grandfather Richardson actually was as an only child because he had twin brothers that died at a very young age. I think there were two, and after that, I don't know if his father died or what, but I know that he and his mother lived together always. And then after the Civil War, right after the Civil War, when the what am I trying to say? When the yellow fever hit, whatever that was, people were dying all around them. So great grandmother Richardson, which was Susan Elizabeth, took my grandfather, and I think they had 2 or 3 slaves with them and some household help, and they had a wagon and mules, and they left to go to Texas. Now, the reason they were going to Texas, Granddaddy Richardson told me, was that his mother he had a great aunt out there named Molly Richardson. That's all I know about her. They were going there. They got as far as Clarendon, Arkansas, and they got caught really in the middle of the yellow fever. And people were dying all around them. And actually, everybody in their group died, but Grandfather Richardson and his mother. And he told me that she put him on a mule, and they rode all the way to Texas to the family. He never said any more about me. I was young. I should have asked more questions, about it. I wish I had. But I didn't. Anyway, I didn't know. Now I want to go back to Daddy's family just a little bit, my H.B. Richardson's family, with all these brothers and sisters. The Depression hit, and cotton went down to 3 cents a pound. So Daddy told me this one time. He and Graham, his friend Graham, and he had another wonderful friend named Scoot Crutchfield. And Scoot's name was A.O., but all I ever remember is Scoot. And I want to emphasize here that all those years that Scoot and my daddy stayed real close. In fact, Scoot came to Lepanto and worked for Daddy for many, many years. And his wife's name was Pearl, and they had a daughter about my age named Johnny Dale and a son named Thomas. And they were like an extension of our family in many ways. We did some things with them. But things were so bad that Daddy and Scoot and his friend Graham hitched train rides up to Detroit to find work. And all they could find was work at a bologna factory. Well, they lasted 3 weeks. And Daddy called home. They all called home for money to come home, and that was the end of that. But as long as I lived at home, Mother and my brother Spud and I, all 3 loved fried bologna in the morning with the gravy. But he didn't want any bologna in the house. And every time he would go away on a fishing trip or a hunting trip, he would go out and buy a big stick of bologna and say, "Y'all have it all gone before I get back." He didn't want it in the house. So that really had kind of done him in with that. But Daddy's brothers and sisters, this is strange. I've always said that if Faulkner were alive, he'd have a great novel out of it because it was so weird. After Grandmother died, they all moved up to the big house, and I can remember this house very well. It was a long house with a big dog trot right in the middle of it, and all the rooms went off the dog trot. The hall was huge, and I can remember skating in the hall there and getting in trouble for it. I guess I'd gotten a pair of skates for Christmas, I don't remember. And all the doors opened off of the great long hall. Every single room had a fireplace in it. I can remember when that was not electrified, and there was no running water there, but there was a well right at the back door off of the kitchen. And but the thing was, in the dining room, they had a big proper dining room with a very, very long, narrow table. And they had in there what they called a pie safe, where all the dishes were kept, And I guess with that many children in a family, I think my Aunt Maudie, with some help, did all the cooking. I know that there was a big garden, and I know that Daddy and Ralph and Uncle Brown planted cotton. And anyway, during the Depression, after all that got so bad, Daddy had 3 Easton cousins that were brothers. There was Uncle Wayne, Uncle Allen, and Uncle Kerry. And they all 3 came to Arkansas to find work. Those 3 did, and to farm. And they were sharecropping, basically, out on what's known as the Hulsey farm, which is out in Lepanto. And Daddy came to join them, and the 4 of them lived together. They were all 4 old bachelors. Well, about the same time, my mother's family had immigrated from Drew, Mississippi to the area near Etowah, Arkansas. And my grandfather Vance was farming there. And I will get into their history a little bit later. And Mother and Daddy met, and Daddy was 15 or 16 years older than Mother. My grandfather always said that if he had known that, he wouldn't have let her marry him, But we don't know about that. That's history, isn't it? But at any rate, eventually they met, and they had a courtship, and Mother told me a funny thing about their courtship. She said she had a date with Daddy one night, and they were at a party somewhere near a lake, and that he was flirting with another girl, or she was flirting with him, I'm not sure which. But at any rate, there was a canoe in the lake. And I guess he was trying to calm her down, so he got her in the canoe, and he was kind of, pushing them around in the water, and she got mad and stood up and turned the canoe over. They both got soaking wet. I always thought that was a funny story. But anyway, they married on the 2nd of February, I think in 1934. It was 1935, I think they married. And they married in the law offices of Fallon Fraley in Lepanto, Arkansas. And at that time, one of the Easton uncles, Uncle Allen, had married Hetty Mae Martyr. Now let me get into this. The Martyr girls were first cousins to my mother. And there was Hetty Mae and Sue. I can't remember all of them. There was a big family of them, and they lived actually between Lepanto and Tyrons at that time. It's where Charlie Martyr and his family lived. But Aunt Zona Martyr, who was Hetty Mae's and Sue's mother, was my grandmother Vance's sister. So see, what happened was Alan married Hetty Mae. Well, Wayne married Sue. So we had two brothers married two sisters. My mother was first cousin to the two sisters. My father was first cousins to the two groups. So as a result, all the Easton kids and us were all what's known as double cousins. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. And they married on the 2nd of February, and Alan and Hattie Mae Easton were their witnesses. There was also another brother named Kerry Easton that we were all very close to. And eventually he took his family for health reasons and moved to Arizona. But they came back and spent a month every summer. So, we were all still had a very good relationship. But that sort of brings me up to date right there on that. And I'll stop now.